Welcome to the space between, alignment. As human beings, we have so many things that pull us out of alignment. Nothing more so than the thoughts that run through our heads. Alignment takes many forms and is very personal to each one of us. How do we know when we are in alignment? What steps can we take when we feel so disconnected? And how do we take aligned action to move into the lives we dream of? Jessica Cerato has been immersed in numbers for decades. As a professional numerologist and energy strategist, she translates the energy of dates, numbers, and patterns into everyday language to help others feel more confident and joyful. We discuss alignment and what a massive role this plays in our lives. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome to the space between. My name is Alyson and I am so excited to have you all join me for another amazing episode of the Space Between podcast. Today, we are going to talk about yet another big theme, alignment. And with me today is a old friend come newer person back in my life, Jessica Cerato. Jessica, welcome to the Space Between.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's so
I
nice
am
to
so
connect.
glad that we reconnected and
Mhm.
the timing was divine.
Yes, agreed. Isn't it always?
It always is. It
Yeah.
always is. We caught each other on social media. I think thanks to social media, we reconnected and we found out we were jamming on the same stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the algorithm showed me exactly what I needed. So thank you for once, maybe the algorithm.
Yes, exactly. The polarity of social media.
Yeah,
But
right.
I wanted to bring you on, and it was funny, in full disclosure, we didn't really know exactly what our theme was going to be until a few minutes ago. And I sort of love that because I had a reading with you. You are a numerologist, an intuitive. Um, wow, my reading was unbelievable. And I just want to say thank you publicly. It was oh, soul filling. And it was just affirmation and aligned action. And it was just all the things. So thank you for that.
Thank you for being open to it. I mean, it's my most favorite thing to do, right? Which is why I've chosen to do it. It's just so beautiful when someone is open to receive information really from themselves, and I'm kind of more of like the conduit or even a little bit of a translator, right? So it's all coming from you. I'm just kind of this mirror back to you.
I love that word translator.
Hmm.
And so many of the episodes in the space between have been about this sort of different dimensional time. And there's different people that are vibing with different things, and we're connecting back to ourselves. And alignment is a word that comes up all the time in spiritual communities, in the physical plane. I feel like it's something that really does transcend all different types of energy and vibration. So I think it's important that we talk about it.
Agreed. And we were just laughing of how many times we've heard this word, and many times we don't even realize when we are in alignment or out of alignment because it's sometimes really hard to tell. So I think that's just so interesting to me. Physically, it might be a bit easier, but emotionally and spiritually, it's tough. And so I think the first step is like being really aware of, oh, this is how I uniquely feel when I'm in alignment or out of alignment, and then taking action from there.
Yeah. And I think too, like the space between the funky time that we're in, this weird post COVID world that we can't go back and we don't want to go back, but we don't quite know where we're going. We are tapping, so many of us are tapping more into ourselves, thinking about who am I? What do I want? And that's why I love this theme because so many things, if I think about it from sort of a surface level, right? We can start surface so that we could go deeper. So many things I used to be into or used to like drive me or excite me, I could care less about.
Yeah. And what you just said about not going back just sparked me, right? Because obviously that's the easiest path. When we feel ourselves coming out of alignment or just, for lack of a better word, like feeling a bit off, we know where we came from. And we know perhaps at one time in our life, we did feel better. So we're like, okay, that's the safest spot. That's the safe, like we want to go back there. But a lot of us are smack in the middle, equidistant between going back and going forward. And that's the brave choice, because that's where the true alignment is. It's in our future, it's going ahead. But that's kind of scary because it's unknown. We haven't aligned yet in that space, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that too. And there's the middle is where the present moment is,
Yeah.
right? And you mentioned that before. And we have the past, which it creates so much strife and just uncomfortableness. And something were to happen to me and you right now, like in this moment, right? Say something crashed on my side. We were like, oh, your experience of that just sound or my reaction is going to be totally different than mine because of everything we've been through. And I always think that when it comes to alignment, you have to understand where you are now, which is so hard.
It's so hard because our mind can really be in only two places. Our mind is always in the past or in the future.
Right.
And really, like, depending on the person, some people's mind likes to go to the past. Others are always thinking about the future. And what's in the present moment is our intuition, right? Our intuition doesn't live in the past and it doesn't live in the future. It's here. So I think that's also the tricky part is, our mind has served us well for so long. But our intuition, this alignment is in the present moment. And for many of us, that's the trickiest place to be. Yeah.
It's so hard. And I love that. And you're right. I mean, I'm sure you probably understand neuroscience pieces differently than I do, but the human brain is not very evolved. Although we're evolving as humanity and humankind, it is very difficult to just be neutral and be in the moment and be grounded and all of the things. My husband is somebody that kind of looks behind, right? He's someone that's always like, oh, and you'll meet him because he's dying to get a reading with you. But I was always somebody historically that looked to the future. I was anxious. He was he had shame, and he's talked about it on the podcast. So it's nothing that I'm stepping over him to say. But I think a lot of people listening can relate to that because it is this push-pull where so much of the beautiful synchronicities in our life and, so much stuff that you talk about in your work and in your readings happens in the present.
But how much gratitude when you just said that of like, man, our mind is working so hard. Our mind like wants what's best for us. So in those two examples, if you're feeling nervous in the present moment, in your husband's case, his mind sweeps in and he's like, let me get evidence from the past, right? And your mind sweeps in and like, okay, let me create evidence in the future, or let me right? So it is less about, it's not about shutting our mind off, as you know, but it's like really having our intuition and our mind work together. And when your intuition can say like, thank you, mind, like, I know you're trying to help. Yes. I've got this. Yes. And then like that trust between, I always laugh. I always ask people if that is a challenge for them, is to like name those two parts of yourself. Give your mind a name. Give your intuition a name. And then even in a visualization, or even just by closing your eyes, say like intuition, like, Mary, whatever you want to call her. What do you need from, my mind is always Mabel. I'm like, what do you need from Mabel? What is Mabel trying to say?
I love
And then it's
Mabel.
Like mine, like, right? What are you trying to like, and really having them work together instead of fighting against each other.
That's amazing. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to this? I mean, you are just the way that you are and the things that you say and your path. I mean, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you've arrived at this present moment to have this amazing conversation with us.
I know. Well, as you said, we grew up together, right? We are both from this small town in Pennsylvania. And always in school, I was very good at math. Numbers came quite easy to me. I always remember in like AP calculus, like everyone else would be showing their work on the board. And I'd be like, why are you doing that? Just the answer is this. But I had a really hard time explaining why. So my teachers didn't like it because they're like, show your work. I was like, I don't know. So, but at that time, of course, if we think back to when we grew up, you go to the guidance counselor and you fill out all these things about what you're good at. And they were like, wow, you have this thing with numbers. Like, and, a lot. And I also was like a very feeling person. I was a very emotional person. So at that time, it was like, well, finance. I mean, obvious business. That's the obvious choice. And so I did. I went to school for business and finance. And it was really obvious as I got closer and closer to graduation and even interned in the city there of, wow, yes, I was using my intuition with the numbers, but that wasn't the place for me, right? Although my mind wanted me to be on Wall Street, of course, that's what I was working for. There was something inside my heart that was like, ah. So, but I wasn't sure what. And so I went to work on board a cruise ship. That's a left-hand turn, right? For 7 years, I traveled the world, but it was through there that I met so many people, and really brought me back to my passion and love for people. And when I came back to land, as we say, just like we were talking about, the familiar, like it was easier for me to go back to the familiar. So I went back to business, but this time with like a human resources little bit of an edge. So I worked in payroll and finance and human resources. Oh my gosh, for a long time, until 2020, when, as all of us know, imagine that, you know, all of these things that were possible were no longer possible. It felt like this. But how cool is that? When things that were always possible were not possible, here's the polarity. Everything that was not possible suddenly became possible.
Totally.
Right? And so I laugh. I always say that this, I was very aware of how this makes me sound, but during that time, I had two really young kids. My kids are older now, but they were, oh my gosh, 2 and 4. And after being at home with them, working full time for months and months and months, I just needed a break. And there was this retreat that was happening like on a local island here. So I wish I was like, oh, I knew this, my life was about to change when I went on this retreat. It was like, no.
I just need a break.
I just need to not like be with them, honestly, for 2 days. And so I went, and in that retreat, we accessed the Akashic records through a visualization and meditation. And I was shown a book all about numbers. And it was very clear that I had written that book in a past life as a man. And in this life, I was meant to do it as a woman. And that really sparked my interest in numerology. And so I right away began to study, really became obsessed with it. But it was less I was learning it, I was like remembering it. So that's how I came to be this full-time now professional numerologist and intuitive, because of, it's so funny. I never thought of, so thank you. I never thought about it that way, because what really shifted for me is the things that I only thought were possible were no longer. And this just opened up a whole new world for me. So having, and like kind of caused me to realign, because that's so interesting. So this feels like, oh, this is such an awareness for everybody. So in 2020, or whatever this time period for you, where you're like, is this what I want to do? We were feeling this disalignment, or we were feeling out of alignment. What was happening? Well, there was some frustration. That's a key when you're out of alignment. Physical symptoms, right? Tension, fatigue, restlessness, overthinking, where every little thing feels difficult, right? And when we're feeling this, many of us look to the external, like what can fix this for me? And it's always, for me, has been, okay, how can I realign from the inside? How do you feel about that?
Oh, by the way, I love that you just had that aha moment. I could feel it in you. You're like,
I was like,
God. By the way, this is the space between. This is exactly what just happened to you is exactly why I started the podcast. Thank you so much. Right. See, everyone, like everyone has these moments when they listen to this podcast where they're like, oh my God. Because that's exactly what was happening to me in real time, because this is my calling and my purpose. And I was going through it being like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I'm not aligned. I turned 40. I was like, I can't do this anymore. What am I doing? Why am I here? What is happening? Why can't I go to the store? Oh, I can't do the things that I always used to do. I can't distract. We were stripped of everything, for the most part, not everything, but a lot of things we used to cope
Yeah.
with the discomfort and the is it disalignment, unalignment? Are they both words? I don't know.
Well, we're making up our own words.
We're
Out of
making up our own
alignment.
words. Out
Yeah.
of
Out
alignment.
of alignment.
And then that's when you start to, you're forced. We were forced to look and be like,
Mhm.
wait, what? And globally, as humans, this wasn't just here. I mean, you live in, you're Canadian, right?
Yep.
Same stuff.
Everywhere.
It was everywhere. And people were just like, okay, I don't care how famous you are, how not famous you are, how much money you had, how much we were all brought home.
Yeah. And it was just so interesting. I was kind of just thinking about kind of these four wheels on a car, right? Because we know we kind of a lot of times with mechanics think of like this alignment. And so when we being one of these wheels, we're also realigning within us. It became very clear for many of us that the car, quote unquote, that we were attached to, the organization, the workplace, even some family structures,
Totally.
that
Friends, all of it.
right, that structural alignment, right,
Yep.
was also we started to feel a little bit of tension there, of stagnation. I mean, I'm thinking of this big visual of like all of a sudden when one of the wheels starts to move faster than the other, it
Right.
doesn't make one wheel better than the other. It just means that they can't really roll together anymore. And so it's like either we not only realign within ourselves, but then realign with the structure that we're in, or find another structure and move on.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the car example too, because everybody can kind of resonate with
Yeah.
that. Alignment is something that, in a sort of spiritual and purposeful sense, is something that I didn't even understand was possible for me. Like I
Mm.
went from pre 2020, we'll call it 2019 and before. I was very unintentional about a lot of the things I was doing in my life, which people will find interesting about me because now people are like, really? But the people that have known me, I mean, you knew what we were so
Yeah.
young when we knew
Yeah.
each other. I mean, it's different, but like in my 20s and my early 30s, everybody would not think that I was like that, but I was kind of just going from thing to thing, whether it be work or I've been in a relationship for a very long time. It was friendships that I had, it was extracurricular things that I did, kind of hobbies that I had. I was just kind of like moving through and not thinking about what it meant or why I was doing it. It just
Mhm.
kind of, I would stumble upon, if that's the right word, like the next thing and just be like, oh, this, because I'm curious by nature. I'm a curious person, which is why I love the work I'm doing now. I love to talk to people like you and hear, what your experience has been. And it is shocking to me how that light switch flipped in my life. I can only speak about my experience, right? But I think I've spoken to a lot of people on the podcast and offline about how
Yeah.
this happened to all of us. It was like, wait, who am I?
Yeah.
What do I
And
care about? What am I
and it's
doing?
so interesting, right? Because right when you're talking about this, the number eight is coming to me. So, everyone, if you can think about this number eight, it's the only closed number. So, it
Yep.
has no opening, right?
Yep.
And it speaks to our independence and reminds us that everything that we need, we have inside of us, right? And what you're just saying is if you think about the top half, which is the head, the intention. So our intentions come from our thoughts, from our mind, like being intentional. The commitment, the bottom half of that comes from our actions. So taking aligned action that's connected to those intentions of the brain. But what's the missing piece that many of us forget is where that number connects right at our heart, and that's
Mm.
devotion, right? So I think that's even, we didn't think about this before, at least I didn't, but
Ugh,
like that
I just got
alignment is like,
chills.
yeah, like when your intentions match your commitments, fueling that devotion. And that's what allows you to stay in that momentum, that
Right.
flow of the eight. And it's like intention, commitment, devotion, intention, commitment, devotion. And if one
That's
of
so
those are
beautiful.
off, so like you said, like if you were taking action, um, but you hadn't set the intentions first. If you weren't
Right.
intentional, you were so busy, right? You were
Yep.
always moving, but you were just in the
And I
bottom half.
actually, as you're thinking about it, right, we're going to
Yeah.
show everybody here that can
Yeah.
see. For those that are listening on an app, we're just like doing an 8, right? Looking at an
Yeah.
8. I constantly felt like I was in a wheel.
In the bottom.
I
Yes.
literally felt like I was in a wheel, and not a good one, because wheels can be great, but
Yeah.
this one wasn't. I was burnt out. I was constantly nervous. I was constantly worried. I was just like, what? And there was a piece of me, and I don't know if you resonate with this. There was a piece of me that would always wonder, like, there's something else. Like, I always knew,
Mhm.
but I just couldn't get close to it. And then 2020 happened, and it was like, here you go, check. This is it.
Yeah.
So
And
much,
it,
half of your life is like not resonating with you anymore. Like, cut bait. It's time to cut bait.
and I love how you just described kind of that bottom half of the 8 where you were like always busy, but you felt in this wheel. And I would say if you're listening and you don't resonate with that, you might have been in the top half where you were just in your mind, where you had all these quote unquote good intentions. You were going to do the thing on Monday. You had a lot of things like even in your journal or things that you were always thought would be nice to do, but it never went down into the commitment. It never went down into the action. So you were stuck in a loop, but it was like the loop in your mind.
Right.
And both of those create burnout just differently. Yeah, that's
Okay,
so
this is
fascinating.
so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
What we just uncovered and cracked. I mean, I guess you
No,
think of 8s that way,
I think of
right?
eights that way. And of course,
Right. So
because
thank you
this
for
year,
sharing that with
yeah,
us.
this
That's amazing.
year is the year of the 8. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4, right? So
Okay.
universally, we're all feeling this. But of course, our personal numerology, if we have 8s in our chart or where they are, we feel it differently. But I actually had not thought of it in terms of alignment
Right.
before.
Because that's
Um,
really alignment,
that
right?
is, that is.
You, because I've done a lot of spiritual work. I've, taken so many courses. I've done all the things. And it's ultimately there's an intention and then there's an action or a neutrality or an inaction, if that's, whatever it is. But there is some sort of shift. And and I love how you said people can be stuck up in the top half
Yep.
of the 8, because I know so many of my friends and people that I care about are stuck there. They're like, I have this amazing idea, or I want to do this thing and I feel so passionate about it and I don't really know what to do. So that middle part, right, where the 8 connects, I can actually see it in my
Yeah.
head. That's our heart.
Oh my gosh. And you
And
know
that
what?
is where the alignment lives.
Yes. And what you just said sparked something in me. If you're listening and you're not relating to the words we're using, intention, commitment, and devotion, you can think of it this way: intention is the what, commitment is the how, and devotion is the why.
Yep.
When you align the what, the how, and the why,
Yep.
that's that momentum that allows you to keep moving and feeling that flow, and also trusting in the timing. Because if you kind of trust in this flow and this momentum, you know that it will happen, perhaps not as quickly as you might have thought, or maybe it's going too quickly.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Well, everything
Yeah.
requires patience, which none of
Yes,
us have.
I know.
I've been working real hard on that. I've gotten a little bit better this year. It's like a little inch by inch, but it's the small steps, right? That's another
Yeah.
thing.
And also, I think that is a common, not for everybody, but a lot of people in our generations. I laugh. My kids are always like, "You're born in the 1900s." I'm like, I know. Okay, but for
That's
those of
so
us,
funny. I never even
yeah,
thought about that.
yeah. But for those of us who are born anywhere in the 1900s, right, with that 1 and that 9, we have a little bit the opportunity for more frustration in our chart. It does depend on the other numbers you have, right? But I know you and I share a lot in our numerology, and one of the things we both share is this arrow of frustration, and that's because we know the potential. We can feel the potential of something or someone, and like you said, the antidote is patience, which we don't want to hear, but that
It's
is the
so
truth.
hard.
Yeah.
It's been the hardest lesson of my life. But that's the other thing too. I mean, I think with alignment, and this is something that big, big, big happened for me in 2020. I started to understand the bigger picture. because
Mm.
I think there is a world where I was very focused outwardly, but yet doing a ton of inner work. It felt very disjointed to me. So, like, I would watch the news or I would talk to somebody and I'd be like, oh, that's what's going on. And then I would like contact switch and like go in, right? I was doing a lot of that because I really started on the spiritual path in like 2009, 2010. So, and then in 2017, I was like deep into shadow work, like super, super, super deep. So I think even just for survival reasons, and I'm sure some listeners can relate to this, like I had to dip in and out of it. Like I couldn't just, it never felt like one. And now as I sit here so many years later, it all is one to me, right? And the alignment of the universe and what's happening in the collective and the country and with people I care about, it just like I can see it differently. But I had to really focus on myself for a while and figure out, which is not easy to do because you're peeling back the onion and you're seeing so many things about yourself that you never wanted to admit. But you have to do that work so that you could figure out what it is that you align with and what it is that you want to do here. And like you said, that Akashic Records, and we should talk about that for sure. Like
Yeah.
just having that experience, in 2020, I did a meditation and I was able to see my strongest guide. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen walk me into the Akashic Records. I didn't go any further. And I definitely want to like revisit that. I love that you had such a specific experience with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened to both of us in 2020. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that will resonate with what we're talking about.
Yeah, if we think about really just the energy of 2020, so we had the four, so 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0. And in the empowered side, the four is about structure and foundations. And everyone's thinking, we did not become like, we didn't create stronger foundations in 2020. Well, what did we do? The disempowered side, we cracked them because it was like these foundations are not sustainable. These found like we need to, break it all down to rebuild. And that's how really energy works. It is this polarity of both sides. I like to call it like in the flow and in the mud and kind of everywhere in between. And it's embracing like all aspects, just like you were able to embrace, like you said, the shadow work. Like, is it great? Is it like amazingly like so exciting and comfortable? No. But but if you now have experienced that polarity, you have given yourself, even subconsciously, evidence that the opposite polarity is also true and possible. So it's like that pendulum, right? Of like, you can trust in the other side. And that's also why I love just working with energy so much is, of course, we all have these quote unquote bad days where we're feeling a little bit in the mud. But when we can sit and be like, wow, like what a gift, because I can feel this. This is what the numbers say to me today. And it's just the opposite end. So so then what
Yep.
can I do? And there's I mean, you've talked about a lot of them on the podcast, but what can I do to shift my energy if I want to,
Yeah.
right? And it can be as simple as taking a shower, right? It's just those little things that really help us, I think, align when we're aware of our alignment.
Yeah.
We all just get that feeling of like something's just a little bit off. Doesn't mean to like burn the whole thing down. It's just like, okay, scan the body, what's out of alignment. Okay, like bring it in. And I think for sensitive people like you and I, a lot of times we perhaps sense this in others. And so we also just need to be aware of like, okay, like I'm coming out to help, or right. But then you see how that's like, even I can feel in my body of like sometimes that causes me to come out of alignment. And so instead, it's like, how can we maybe hold up the mirror or encourage them to come into their own alignment? Um,
I love
because
that.
that's where it feels good, right? If you think about, well, I'm just curious about this for you because I'm asking you a question as I'm asking it to
Love
myself,
it.
which is so funny. It's like, okay, so when you are in alignment or when you have felt in alignment, what does it feel like in your body, or like what happens in your life? For me, I just feel like grounded, um, confident. Um, what's funny? I feel I get this sense of luck a little bit, but I'm reminding myself that like luck is just like preparation meets opportunity, right?
Right.
So, um, and also just like authenticity. Because when you're in alignment, you don't need to like think about what to say or try to remember how to act. You can just be
B.
you. Yeah, be. Yeah. How do
Yeah,
you feel? Like, I'm so
it's
curious.
funny. I have different, I mean, that all resonates with me,
Yeah.
but for me, and it's fun, I'm going through one of those periods right now. So, of course, this is why we're talking about it because everything
Yeah.
is the way it's been. I feel lighter. I feel more full
Ooh.
and I feel floaty is not the right word because I'm not disconnected, like flowy. Like my body feels lighter. I feel my muscles fit like at all of it. I feel an ease.
My
There's
gosh.
an ease that just oozes from me.
I love this so much because without even knowing it, we have basically proven the point of like individual energy
Yeah,
matters. So, and I'm laughing because it's not necessarily important the details for the podcast, but I'm in my mind looking at your chart and knowing my chart and being, of course, like this is what alignment means to me and this is how
so
alignment feels
thanks
to
you.
you. And
Yeah,
so then, like for everyone listening, alignment is going to feel different for you also. You could
totally.
probably resonate to what Alyson and I are saying, yeah, but it's like finding your own feeling of alignment because you're aligning to you, to your own heart. And honestly, it goes back to everything. Like it goes back to intuition, like we were talking about. How I access my intuition is different than you and is different to someone else. Like how I make decisions is different than you, than someone else. And so and I think that's what's so hard, right? Is because we look outside of ourselves and we're like, oh, that person makes decisions quickly, or oh, that person feels their intuition, like they get a feeling in their body. That person sees things like in their mind, or, and we start to be like, oh, then I don't have intuition. You
Right.
do, but you
Totally.
just access it differently. Yeah, that's so
Right.
interesting.
And I love that because so much of this time that we're moving into, which there was massive, we're recording this at the end of November, 2024. There was massive energetic shifts that have happened over the last, well, really this whole year.
Yeah.
But even over the past like week and a half. And this new time that we're moving into is so much less of the outward, looking at other people to maybe understand where it is we need to go, or what do I, I'm going to listen to my parents, or I'm going to listen to my priest, or all of those things that we were just very external. It's now internal, and that is the whole point of this work. Is like
Yeah.
it's an inside job, and I love that you were able to, and you and I together, this is why conversation is so important, everyone. You and I were together to be able to come and say, wow, it is so different for everyone. And for the people that are listening, think about that. Think about the times in your life when it felt good, or when it felt easier, or if when it felt that might have been a time you were in alignment. It also might have been a time when you were completely dissociating.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you know, okay, this just like so funny. There's something in your energy that always is like gives me such strong visuals. So what you just said is like the difference is just think about back in your life when you were getting all green lights, not red lights, okay? So that
It's a
feels
great
like
way to put it.
alignment, okay?
Mhm.
But what you just said of if you were going fast but you were disassociated, you weren't even noticing the lights. You were just driving. So it wasn't that they were green or red, you
Yep.
just weren't noticing.
Yep.
So yeah, I just love that differentiation of like you could have still been moving, but that if you think about that disassociation, not even paying attention to the traffic lights, of course you were on a roadway to disaster because like
Right.
eventually you
And
were
then
going to
all of
go
a
through
sudden the shit falls apart and you're like, oh my God, what happened? And you're like, oh, I wasn't even
paying
there.
attention. I wasn't even like
It's
following the rules
like,
of the road. Yeah.
right.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And so
Right.
because all of us really have had um I feel all of us have had those times of like the green lights, and all of us have had the times of the red lights. where those red lights felt,
Polarity.
right?
Can't
Like,
have green without red.
yeah. So yeah, there's such reflection here. And it's so interesting that we're kind of like coming to this because I'm kind of laughing. I love to use a lot of humor in my work because I'm a firm believer that like spirituality doesn't need to be serious.
It's
And so
so
it's like,
funny though, isn't it? Like when you
yeah,
really start, like it's hilarious.
it's
I
hilarious.
agree. It's the funniest thing.
So it's just like, ha ha, okay, everyone, here's the joke. So if you're like, oh, mirror, reflection, I have to look inward, and you're excited about it, you're going to love 2025. If you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to look in the mirror, I'm not ready for it, 2025 is still going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the 9 energy, which is the magic mirror, and you are going to have some beautiful opportunities to really sit with that resistance. Um, and I mean, mathematically, I love the 9 so much.
Okay.
It's the mirror because anytime you add a number to 9, you get that number. And anytime you multiply a number by 9, you get 9, right? So it has, again, those
Right.
polarities.
That's the mirror. Oh, that's so
That's the mirror.
cool.
And
Okay.
so this is 2025 for all of us universally. And just like you said, it's from within. It's like these diamonds. Like we as diamonds are really wanting to come up and shine. But of course, we know the process of what happens for the diamond to come out is this pressure, right? Is this,
That
yeah,
I've had that visualization in my third eye for like months now. Just a gem, bright blue,
gem.
so many facets and so many
Yes.
ways that it can shine and mirror other parts of itself, right? And I love that. I love that so much. So talk to me a little bit about so people can have an understanding. Everything is energy. We know this.
Yeah.
So, how do numbers resonate specific energy within your work in numerology? Talk to us about that because I think people are
Yeah.
super curious. And I didn't know until I had a reading with you. By the way, link it below. Everyone needs to have a reading with her. It's
I
like,
love this
holy
so
shit, it was
much.
amazing.
Well,
So, talk to
this
us
is,
about that.
yeah, this is such an old science and math. So, to put everyone's mind at ease first, I'll tell you the scientific reason why numbers have frequency. It's because just like musical notes, the vibration of each number oscillates at a different rate per second. So, if you can think about a sound wave or a light wave, each number has a different cadence. And this was proven by Pythagoras way back when. He's the grandfather of numerology. He's also, famous for a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And he was actually studying music. And the length of each of the notes, he was like, oh, it sounds different the longer a note is held. And then he started to really go into the numbers of it. So then, of course, each number has this different energy, like just like a sound or a light wave. And so then we as energetic beings interact with it differently. So this is also the key. So this is why some people's lucky number, for example, is 7, and why other people are like, "Oh, that's so unlucky," right? Because you
Right.
feel it, you feel
Right.
the energy differently. And then just like a musical note, it has like the sharp side and the flat side and like everything in between. So it has these different waves of energy. And so when we take a date of birth or we take just a day now, we can look at, I always love to use music because I think everyone can understand this. We look at this overarching sound, right? But that's all of these numbers coming together to create that sound, that energy. And then we look at the individual numbers. So today, for example, is November 25th, 2024. We look at the individual energy of those numbers. So we've got 2 1s, 3 2s, a 5, and a 4, but together they create an 8. Oh, that's so funny. No wonder we're talking about the 8 today. Duh.
Obviously. I was like, wait, I don't do math, but I feel like she's going to
Right,
say 8.
say 8. Okay, so then, and that, so it's like when all the notes come together to create a chord, right? But just like weather, right? So just like a meteorologist can forecast weather, a numerologist, we can forecast energy because it's all patterns. We know what's coming. But that doesn't mean that each of us interact with each day the same. To think about like when it rains, you might be excited about the rain. I might not like rain. I might choose to bring an umbrella out. My kids will just run outside naked. I mean, like everyone does something different, right?
Totally.
And so it's about how our personal energy chooses to intersect with this kind of universal energy,
with the collective energy.
with the collective energy. Yeah.
Oh,
And so just think about this.
Cool.
It's like, because this is why a lot of times it just makes relationships easier. It makes business easier, right? If you know exactly how the collective is going to be feeling, you can speak to them in a way that they're going to listen to you and take you up on the solutions you have to offer, right? It's why if you have a business with a large team, knowing each one individually is going to make a huge difference. Knowing, like, I always laugh, like, this is like the biggest aha, and it sounds so silly, but knowing like which days to schedule these team meetings on, sometimes more importantly, which days to avoid, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Like,
right.
We can just do so much with this information, because, like, as you said, it's all energy. And so the energy is there. We're going to feel it whether we kind of want to or not. So why not actively engage in it? Like, be this active participant and contribute to the collective. That's my opinion anyway.
In a more intuitive way. And I love the way, by the way, the way you explain that is so amazing, because it can feel very esoteric.
Yes.
We talk about astrology, we talk about numerology. I'm going to have somebody on to talk about human design. There's all of these. All this is energy. I don't know how many times I have to say it. And people are like, what is energy? You have to figure out what it is for you, right? Energy is what creates everything. It's what, I mean, we could get so deep on that, but ultimately it's like, what does it mean to you? How are you going to present yourself in this energetic time? What is your frequency? What is your frequency right now? What was it an hour ago? What about last night? I popped off on somebody in a restaurant because they were butting into my conversation at a dinner table. That was a different energetic Alyson versus what exists right here, and it's just moving through life. Like, this is the fun of it though. Like, when you start to really know who you are and you're trusting yourself and you're getting these kind of amazing, I call them pings, right? And you could call them whatever you want, but these pings as your path opens up and life opens up. And then, I reconnect with you and I have this amazing reading, and then I tell my mom and she does. It's just like, this is what it's all about. This is what makes life so fun and so cool. But yeah, there's the flip. The more you know about yourself, the more you're like, oh my God, is that me? Like, even last night I thought, like, did I actually do that? I actually did that. Okay. But because you're very aware. You're very aware of yourself, and then you can bring awareness to others in service, which is what we're doing on this podcast. And it just grows.
Yeah. And then you just start to see the universe is always sending us signs, right? But when we are like more in tune and aware, we just notice them more. And these signs can either feel, like you said, like synchronicities, like pings, beautiful glimmers. They can also serve as a reminder to us, like a trigger, right? But it is really identifying like what those signs mean to us. And that's the energy, right? So even if everyone's just like, what is energy? Just imagine yourself walking down the street or walking wherever, and you see a feather on the ground. How do you feel? Like, you look up and you see a license plate, 888, right? It's these moments where if we're not in the present moment, we might not notice them.
We're going to keep driving through the lights. I love this. Right? Like, we have all sorts of car analogies.
We do.
It's so funny.
I'm laughing and I'm like, I'm not even a car person.
No, but it's like, everybody can understand that. Everybody can resonate with that.
Yeah. And it's just so, I think that's the beauty of right now, is it feels like this personal exploration, because it is so personal, and yet we're all in the space between together. Right? Totally. Like, we are contributing to the collective. And I always ask my kids, but I always ask everyone around us, like, you're contributing to the collective. Like, that's fact. Like, energy is energy. You're contributing. So my question to you is, how do you want to be contributing? Is this how you want to contribute today?
Yeah. And how are you contributing?
Yes.
And how do you want to be? With intention, with devotion, with purpose, with aligned action, all of the things we're talking about.
Yeah. It just lit up my whole body. Imagine, this is possible. I believe it. Imagine if every single person in the world was aware of how they were contributing and wishing to contribute in a more authentic and meaningful way. If everyone was in true alignment with themselves, it'd freaking be all green lights everywhere.
Could you imagine? And I'm a student of this work and I have listened, I jam on podcasts and I read books and I'm really into it. Many people have said, so I don't know if this is 100% true and you tell me what you think, but if only 30% of the world's population does exactly what you're talking about, the whole entire vibration of the planet will change. Like it is a wave that no one can stop. And I believe that's why so many of us are waking up right now. It doesn't
Mhm.
take everyone, although that would be probably a different dimension, a utopia. Like we can only dream because I'm
Yeah,
like you. I don't want to call myself an optimist, but I believe in better. I
I do
believe that
too.
we have the power and I believe that we are all one. But many people have said it only takes 30%. That's
Hmm.
how strong love and authenticity and divine action and service,
Yeah. I
compassion
I love that. I
is.
never thought about that, but 3 is the number of amplification, and 0 is this beautiful also an amplifier. And if you just think about that, like, I think that's why it feels so good. If, like, 30% of people, you can surround yourself with those people, right? Like, I love that. Yeah.
So, why don't you talk to us a little bit more? You mentioned a little bit about 2025 and the numerology and energy. We're in the time of transformation unlike anyone has seen in many generations. There is an awakening of humanity. So, how does that kind of relate to the numerology and what's going to happen in 2025?
Yeah. So if we think back to the beginning of this cycle, so these cycles run 1 through 9. This was actually 2017. And so 2017 was the 1 and 2025 is the 9. So this is a completion, yes, but of course, as this is going to bring us back to our youth, that lovely song, every new beginning is just some other beginning's end, semisonic, end of the
Such a
night, the
good
bar. Okay.
song.
This is the feeling of this year, right? I'm calling it the year of unbreakable brilliance, where we are these diamonds, right? Where we have this resilience, where all of this hard work that we've been doing underground within ourselves, behind the scenes, is really being asked to, like, shine, to polish, to come out into the light. And of course, when more people come to the light, those still in the darkness will either view it as an activation, as a motivation to come out, or they will perhaps see it as maybe a trigger or, oh, like, how are you shining so brightly? But that can't stop those of us who are wanting to shine. Like, if you think about this, think about a diamond. The more we shine, the brighter the reflection,
Oh,
right? When we shine, we don't take away the light of anybody else. It's just like, the brighter we
it's
shine,
an
it's an
amplification. It's
amplification.
the
It's,
perfect
yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is what's coming in 2025, and um, things will fall away. Uh, and again, it's our approach and how we view that. We can say goodbye with gratitude for, thanking it for serving us for these past 9 years. We could also try to hold on to it, but that's also what I love about the numbers. The 9 is really objective. We talked about the math behind the 9. And so the 9 is all about acceptance. It is. So when we can really take this objective view of what is happening, um, and really the 9 is also about humanity. This is right, this bigger picture thinking. um yeah, this bigger, that's what I feel. It's we're coming out from all the hard work we've done for ourselves and really showing others what is possible, and knowing that there's not competition. Each one of us will help each other shine more brightly, not take away from the others. And I think for everyone, what I hope comes out for them is this confidence. And I always say, confidence is not going into a room, thinking or knowing that you're better than everybody else. No, confidence is going into the room knowing that you are you, that you are the best version of you. And I wish that feeling for everybody, right? The confidence to shine in who you are and knowing you're exactly like where you're meant to be. And, so many people ask, what am I meant to do? How am I meant to serve? And I always say, like, your purpose is you. Service isn't what you do for others, it's who you are for others. And when we can be confident in who we are, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. When we can be confident in that, the how can be many different things, and it just becomes a little bit easier because we have that unbreakable brilliance within us.
This is one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had. Thank you so much. I mean, I really mean that. Like, I almost like, it's wow. Thank you to both of us.
You.
See, when we're being, this is how this is the flow, right? When you step into your authenticity and who you are. That's such a beautiful way to end our conversation. How can people find you and connect with you? What do you have going on? I know you have one-on-ones.
Yeah.
I think you have another offering right now.
I do. If you want to go deeper into the year ahead, I offer a year ahead forecast where you can join live or the replay, and you'll get a full energetic forecast, just like you would for the weather for the next year. We help you identify a word of the year. We didn't talk about this, but numbers also are underlying language. So each letter has its own number. So of course our names hold a frequency, words hold a frequency. So I'm offering that December 4th. Of course, one-on-one readings. I also offer numerology courses on demand and live if you're wanting to learn this for yourself. You can find me on my website, which is jessicacerato.com. You can find me on social, just like Alyson did, either on Instagram or Facebook. I love it.
We'll link it all.
We'll link everything. Yeah. And really, I just, I think it is the power of connection, right? It's just reaching out to me in whatever way feels good to you. That's going to be different for every number. And really, if you're feeling inspired by this conversation, I just ask you to do pay it forward. Right? Just pay it forward with one intention, one commitment, and one devotion today. I feel inspired to do that.
And me too. Thank you so much. This was so incredible.
This was great.
I'm so happy we reconnected and we got to the point where we could have this conversation and share it with others. And I know in my heart and in my soul that so many people are going to resonate with what we talked about today and hopefully walk away having a conversation with themselves about what alignment really means for them and what is possible for all of us. Because there's really no limits to what we can do.
No. Just look at us. Come on.
In this moment, yes.
In this moment back. Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today on The Space Between. And we will see you all very soon for another episode. Thank you so much for joining us in The Space Between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in The Space Between.